The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Predictive AI World Forum. I'm thrilled and excited to have you here, not only because of the success of the previous two editions in this current webinar series, but also the experts who have joined us today to close the series out with a final, impending, and crucial discussion on how to build your viability. My name is Malay Upadhyay. I'm your co-host, and I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer at SalesChoice. Joining me to facilitate this discussion, someone much more capable than me to carry on this discussion would be Ton Dobie, author of the remarkable Effect and Hailing from Value Inspiration. And without further ado, I would like to turn things over to Ton to introduce our guests and begin the discussion. Ton?
Thank you, Malay. You always impress me with the introduction. I'm getting red cheeks as you speak to me. So, yes, indeed, surviving today and thriving post-corona. That's the topic for the last three sessions, and this one is about it's themed. It's all about your viability, and it's actually a section in my book that Malay already talked about. It's the second section in my book, the second lever that I talk about, and it's a pretty important one because it tells everything about how your company is capable of adapting to new situations. So as they say, never waste a good crisis, and we're in the middle of one. I think from what I've experienced, and I'm around for a while, but I can't imagine anything bigger and more impactful that we've seen happening to the world as this one so far. And I hope it will be the last one at the same time, of course. But it's it's really impacting everything we've become accustomed to. And we were just having a little bit of an introduction kind of discussion before we started. The world has changed. There's new norms, and it's amazing how fast we have been able to adapt to new things. So the question at the end is, in terms of the future, who will leapfrog and use this crisis to leverage the opportunity this creates? And what can you do to be ready for the next big thing? And I imagine, and I actually predict, there's going to be a lot of new things happening. So that's what we are going to talk about today with four tech entrepreneurs that are absolutely on a mission to do something big and meaningful, as I often refer to in my book. Let me introduce them first. So we have on the panel today Patrick Berglund, who's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Teneta from Oslo in Norway. And Patrick has been an early guest on my podcast, and he impressed me with their approach to really transform the way business is done in the container shipping industry. I would recommend you to go to their website, teneta.com, and check that out for yourself. But they're doing something revolutionary there. Second person on the call is Dr. Cindy Gordon, who's the CEO and co-founder of SalesChoice, one of the sponsors of this webinar. Cindy's company is shifting the way companies can increase their sales performance by providing far better insight in terms of what forecasting is all about, but also how salespeople can really focus their attention and efforts on closing the right deals at the right moment in time. Then we have Dagmar Schuler, CEO and co-founder of a company called Aldering from Germany, Munich. It's an intelligent audio engineering platform, and they are the masters with regards to understanding what the meaning is in voice and what you can do with that. And it's amazing what is possible today. And last but not least, we have Paul Zak, who's CEO of a company called Immersion. And the way he nicely summarized this for me is it's a SaaS neuroscience platform that measures what people love. And that's typically to measure actually where people are best performing in their job. And you can use that information to create high-performing organizations. So, yeah, let's go to the first part of this conversation. And just following a little bit the flow of the chapters in my book, which is the area around how to increase the viability of your company. One of the things I have seen as a very big and important trait of companies to survive crises, but also to stay relevant in their industry and in their category is curiosity. The value of curiosity is often underestimated, but it can be your lifeline. And that's what the first part is going to be about. But before we start with that, for those that are in the audience, a quick question to you before I hand it over to Cindy. If I ask you one question, to fill in one word in the chat, how do you feel about the next 6 months and the outlook to your business in relation to where we are right now? Always interesting to see what people answer there. We'll come back on that later once you've put it in. And in the meantime, I'll hand it over to Cindy. So Cindy, given your experience in the tech industry, being most of the time an entrepreneur, but you've also been in other areas of the business, typically in the software industry, of course. What is your point of view on curiosity and how important is it really?
First of all, welcome everybody. And it looks like we've got a bit of a global audience here, and thrilled to be with other global CEOs. I'm really grateful, Ton, that you asked me this question, mainly because, curiosity is one of the core ingredients, not just for entrepreneurship, but also for innovation capacity. I think I want to be very clear that curiosity enablement is not a solo behavior. It's very much rooted in appreciating the value of perception. And what I mean by that is what we see and how we interpret what we see. So being curious, from my experience, requires courage, because in order to foster courage, you need to foster trust in order to actually build up that curiosity, quotient. And I know you're quite familiar with Dr. Diane Hamilton's research. She's one of the leading authorities in curiosity. And so in preparing a little bit for this, I actually dug in and read some of her doctoral research. And I think it was really a good reinforcement of the dynamics. And I think for our audience, with the power of entrepreneurship and cultivating it, whether you're in a, privately held company, because I do believe even in the public sector, you can be entrepreneurial. But those foundations, really require the intellect. The intellectual quotient is very key. But more importantly, it's the emotional side of, and I'm interested with Zach and some of the research that he's been doing, because in order to sort of get that harmony and maybe get that heartbeat up in the right direction, you really need to practice appreciative and quiet. And so your voice and the number of breaths and the mindfulness is really, really, I think, quite key to build up that capacity and resilience. I think, as I look at curiosity from our perspective, we've embedded innovation and curiosity in some of our core leadership behaviors. So we really do take it to heart. And, what I've learned over the years is like a muscle. And what I mean by that is that you need to feed it. If you are, like, for example, we're all going through COVID-19, but having the space to have the conversations about how people are feeling and the empathy that you can have for one another, I think it really does nurture different dialogues. And, like Diane's research was all around, the perceptional construct of, in many ways, curiosity is one dynamic to sort of feed, something that's much more strategic and outcome oriented. So those are a few thoughts. It's a very loaded conversation, and obviously, you can spend your whole life just researching one particular dynamic, but you can't deal with it in isolation. I think is really important to understand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's good that you bring up Diane Hamilton, and her book Cracking the Curiosity Code is something that I would recommend everybody to read, and also check out her index so you can see how your organization is scoring on this topic. So it's the Curiosity Index. I agree completely with you, Cindy. It's indeed about perception and about courage and how you build that courage in an organization. Because saying it is one thing, but actually making it happen in your organization, that's the other thing. So Patrick, a question for you in this case. I want to go a little bit back in time. 2012, you started your company. And like I said, I was impressed with how, the approach you took, the route you took in order to create a difference and actually change the landscape and the way business is done in a very large and ages-old industry. So what has been the role of curiosity in the creation of Xeneta back in 12?
Yeah, I mean, Cindy said a lot of meaningful things there, but I believe curiosity in general is like an instrumental element in any creation. If you're going to build something, I almost can't envision how you would get there without being curious about different solutions, different alternatives, different ways of going about to build it, different building blocks you can use, and so forth. And I believe that was one of the decisive things that enabled us to find sort of the path we had to take to come out with a product. You know, whether it's curiosity as to which stakeholders are willing to work with you, or whether it's curiosity as to which code or which type of code or which infrastructure you should build it all on based on short, medium, and long term, and so forth. But I mean, there's so much written about this, and I believe Cindy sort of wrapped it up very nicely. What I thought I'd add to what Cindy said, as well as what I thought about when I read this is that I think founders probably have more than average amount of curiosity, right? Because they want to see if they can put something to life, and they're curious about that, right? But one of the things I saw that hampered us for a couple of years, really slowed us down, is that we were so curious on all the opportunities that came our way, and this sort of prohibited us from being focused. We quickly found something that sort of worked and chased down that sort of avenue. And then as you expand and grow a business, your outreach increases, meaning you also reach more people and have more input to your business and your concept. And for at least the first 2 years, we often sort of swayed away because we were so enticed by that opportunity, right? And so I mean, I almost only see positive things about, you know, being curious and check the different. I use the metaphor of there's always many doors, and we got to check what's behind most of them. But sometimes if you want to go fast, you just got to go into a few doors and keep on going. And that's sort of the thing that I feel contradicts the positive things about curiosity. It can actually slow you down.
Yeah, you need to have a curiosity filter, otherwise you won't even get out of your bed.
Yeah, it's very hard often if you especially take like young entrepreneurs who's just eager to get things going, and they speak to some, you know, you get a few mentors or whatever, and they have 10 different ideas for you, and they go explore everything. That's just not very quick, right? The pace of things slows down.
Have you found, or have you got any advice in terms of, where do you put the filters? Where do you say go?
Yeah,
where do you say keep on going?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think the way we sort of deal with this today is that we put most of the things in the parking lot. So we have, like, let's say, a vision of where we want to go, and then we have a better definition of what are the key building blocks that needs to get in place in order to get there. And then as time progresses, there's so many smart things that comes up that are obvious. You could build a separate business on multiple of the ideas that's come from the team and from the founders and so forth, but they go in the parking lot. And after a while, you pick some of them up, or you can have partnerships, which is one of the things that we've pushed further on, so that others can try and build it rather than yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the whole discussion.
That's a little bit of. Sorry, go.
No, that's the whole discussion around, like, where do you create defensible differentiation versus what do you really need to make progress. Very well. I like what I've heard here. Dagmar, question to you, because we've been speaking over the last couple of weeks, and I know that your company has really jumped into something that actually wasn't even something that you might be thinking of in the last, well, 9 or 10 weeks ago. So going back in that last 10 weeks, how has curiosity helped you to uncover new opportunities during this crisis? And what have you learned?
Well, curiosity, if you're coming from a background of science, which we actually all came from, when we built up the company, it's a spin-off of a university, is something that you can't separate. So we are always curious. I think we'll always be curious, but we have, I think, a very special or unique approach into jumping on this with this type of curiosity on opportunities. That means that we quite quickly try to see what type of possibilities are there for us to leverage, A, with given things that we already exploited a little bit, and B, what would it take to basically do this in an applicable way that we can very quickly see and build up a demonstration block that deals with different type of crises. So when we came up, or when the pandemic came up, one of the things that we always wanted to discover and do basically was in the area of medical research in relation to voice and especially paralinguistic features with regards to voice biomarkers. This is something where we have consolidated a lot of information throughout our research projects that were also funded from the EU or from the German government. We said quite quickly, oh, Corona is actually something that needs further exploitation, and our approach can actually contribute a lot of information to research, but also to applicable therapy if done correctly. So we very quickly joined some of the sources that we have in the company, retrieved them from other not that prioritized projects and put them on this project to discover whether we can quite quickly build a minimum viable product to release out basically to support this type of Corona research. So that is actually something I think that hasn't been presenting itself as a quick opportunity in the past years, but since the pandemic was so strong coming up now, this was an opportunity where we said, okay, let's use this type of curiosity that we had all the years before to come up with something that now we can quite quickly implement. And that's how we basically refocused very flexibly, very quickly with this type of project without getting the other projects that we have off the focus, but just moved up in a side step where we now really think that we can contribute a lot to research and to medicine for treatment.
Yeah, because at the end, what this is about is that you can, when you listen to someone's voice, you can predict with a very high accuracy whether this persona has Corona or not, right?
Well, more or less. The first part of the minimum viable product that we have now is rather associated with sound events. That means that you basically record for about an hour audio information in a very specific or same setting. So we choose to actually suggest that you take about an hour, or even if you want to do later on at night, where we can detect different type of sound events like coughing, sneezing, lung rattling, different type of breathing frequencies that we then can map to Corona patients or non-Corona patients. The second thing is when you have this type of statistics that you can build a more accurate model in terms of really correlating the disease to this type of sound events that you have, and then monitor, because this is not only based on single sound events but also on histograms, monitor how basically the disease develops, and also have different type of other impacts basically surrounding. That means like if you have, for example, a bad sleep, or if you're snoring a lot, or if you have different type of other diseases that you might have not detected so far, that might show themselves off in your breathing patterns or in your lung rattling. We have different type of information that we then can release with a certain significance to the research, to the therapists, to the doctors, for getting more information about the disease as such. So we start with a small product that basically detects the sound events, enhance it once we've collected the data to a more thorough, really monitoring possibility to detect more patterns about the disease.
Very interesting. And you can see what curiosity then helps it to do. Because I mean, a lot of people would say, okay, I got a product, but what has it got to do with Corona in this case? But that's a different story. So I want to move to part two and actually move the question to Paul. The second part that I want to move on from the curiosity side is about creating new value opportunities. Because once you've been curious and you've identified like possibilities, then how do you go about? A lot of people are always talking about innovation, and I believe innovation is an extremely overhyped word. My definition at the end is that it's about creating new value opportunities, solving something that's broken in the market and something valuable and critical to solve that people would like to pay for. If I ask the question to you, Paul, what is your point of view about first of all innovation and about creating new value opportunities? And what has been the lesson that you've learned throughout your entrepreneurial journey in creating products that people talk about?
Yeah, it's great to be here. I agree with Dagmar. I think there are new opportunities because of coronavirus and the likely change in the world we're going to see, at least for the next couple of years. For our company, I think when we looked at curiosity, often as scientists, we are self-curious. We're curious about things that we find interesting. And with coronavirus, we really started to think about what our customers needed, what crises they were facing. And I think crisis is the right word here for a lot of our clients. And probably like many of you, we had a whole bunch of canceled contracts. So we were really in trouble. And we really sat for a couple of days and said, what do we do? Do we shut down? Do we take a pause and just do nothing for 6 months? Or do we lean into this? And we really found that there were great opportunities, as Dagmar said, with the corona crisis. In particular, everything went remote, and there has not been an effective measurement technology to assess whether remote trainings, remote meetings, creation of content remotely from marketing to entertainment is effective. Is it different than what's done when we're all in a group? No one has really known that. So we really accelerated a bunch of engineering we were doing, and honestly, kind of leaning into coronavirus. So I think it's curiosity from the client's perspective. I think people overuse the word pain as well, but maybe the struggles that those companies come from. And so we did a kind of a pretty radical front end and back end rebuild to broaden our opportunity to address those issues for these clients. So I think it's, as we all know, it's really spending time on the front lines with clients. We've had so many new features enter into our software platform just because I spent a day at someone's business and hung out with them and talked to them, and then some random person, usually, by the way, not an executive, someone on a front line, customer facing employee will say something, gosh, we really wish you knew about how to do this thing. And you go, God, that's a good point. I bet a lot of people have that problem. And, I think we could actually solve that problem.
And what have you done in the meantime to start solving these problems?
We've done a couple things. One is we broadened the number of wearables that we collect data from. The second is we spend a lot more time automating processes where I think our kind of version 1 software platform was pretty nerdy. That is, it wasn't hard to use, but it wasn't pretty and it wasn't super intuitive. So this sort of slowdown, not getting new clients for a couple months gave us a chance to go back and do things that we would have liked to done in V1, but we had to launch and generate some revenue. So really, I think a much cleaner interface, much clearer, easier to understand, and perhaps surprisingly, giving clients less information, but presenting it in a much cleaner way. So I think in the beginning, we really overwhelmed people with information, and there's lots of stuff you can do with data, but the question is, what's most valuable? What do you need now? And that's really a customer choice. It's not an engineering choice.
Completely agree with that one. So giving the microphone back to Cindy, talking about creating products that people talk about, creating new value opportunities. How does it apply to your company?
Thanks, Ton. Before I sort of dive in and answer that, I just want to do a tight linkage back to the innovation side. I've got this metaphor in my head that I just have to release on everybody. Sorry. But I think one of the key things on the innovation side, not to forget, is that in many ways we forget sometimes how humans need incredible nurturing. So, I was out for a long walk this morning. We finally had some nice warm weather in Canada, and you could just see all the trees sort of reaching up to the sun. And I do think when you dig into what are some of the big worries that CEOs have right now, it's very much around balancing the ideation, the curiosity, to the point we talked about earlier on the focus and the balance. But it's also ensuring that we are having deeper conversations, just because there's so many new dynamics that are hitting out all of us in so many different directions. In terms of your specific question, Ton, and just for the audience, we specialize in building guided selling solutions on top of Salesforce data sets, really to do a number of things with AI in terms of things like predictive forecasting or opportunity scoring, and some of the newer areas that are really quite intriguing, I think, to demonstrate innovation is, we know so much about the human DNA, and there's so many digital breadcrumbs that we have about humans. And it was good to hear, the stories about the wearable side, that Zach's building out, and Darling, and building out the emotional and voice detection, and how our breaths, and our wheezing give us context. But one of the big white spaces in sales right now is in the sense of, understanding the culture that you're selling into and the different personas of the individuals, and actually mapping in real time who actually is engaged. And, with the advancements we have now with natural language processing, we're able to actually light up, those personas with the cultural fit. And so I think as we look ahead in this whole area of innovation, and certainly our direction, it's really about solving different use cases and, going in pretty deep, and then being very, very agile to expand. What we often find, and I was smiling, I think it was Paul speaking about the need for focus. Not everybody is ready to adopt some of these innovative ideas, right? So you really do have to stay laser focused on the right client accounts. And I think we're at the point where the segmentation is going to be key now as to which particular segments are ready for this kind of thinking. And then the whole AI space, obviously, probably the biggest thing we've learned, and I think have finally put in place quite well, is it doesn't really matter unless the data that you're collecting is really robust and sound and statistically viable. And, with statistics, you can come up with a pattern, but it may not be representative. So, I think as the industry matures, we're going to see more and more focus on responsible AI and ensuring that it really is bringing, I think, a pattern that we can make informed decisions against. So you asked me a loaded question, Ton, but those are some of my comments.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, taking care of time here in this case as well, I want to kind of move on to my next question, and I want to ask that to Patrick. So we've just been through this pandemic, or actually we're still in it, but hopefully we'll see some light in the tunnel. So do you believe that what has recently happened to us has changed the norms with regards to what we value and what we value less? And more importantly, what does it mean going forward for you personally, but maybe most importantly for the business?
Yeah, I thought about that. My first sort of thoughts on a question like that goes to like the personal side, because I believe we barely scratched the surface of that on how it's going to be working and remote, and we already initiated conversations in the business, how we can reduce office space and so forth. But I wanted to focus on the business side, and I wanted to sort of couple the new value creation or building new value with the curiosity part, because we actually went into this crisis with a 1-year-old product. So last year we moved from only covering ocean freight and also doing air freight. Yeah. But the caveat was that on the air freight, we only did the long-term market, so lengthy contracts, which the likes of, Electrolux, Nestle, Unilever, Lenovo, L'Oreal, all of them use that. But what happened overnight in Jan and Feb is that about 85% of all the belly capacity, which is what's like in the stomach of air freighters with passengers, just disappeared from the market. And with that capacity reduction, nobody could book anything on a long-term contract anymore, because the capacity was so stripped that prices did like 5-6x, right? So they skyrocketed. All of a sudden, we sit there with a product that we have built up for 2 years, and 20% of our revenue base at this point was like air freight revenues. So what did we do when the product value went from 100 to 0? And the cool thing that I'm probably one of the things I'm most proud of is that I did not touch this problem myself. As a founder, this was handled by the organization. The product department stepped in, found a completely new way to get into the short-term market with the existing customer base we had, and within 2 weeks launched a new product again based on a completely different data set. And over the next 4 weeks, we saw that product getting more and more companies behind it feeding their data in. So it went much quicker than ever has in terms of collecting data. And we're doing new sales based on that. So it's nuts to see what you can sort of foster in an organization in terms of, if you get them to be closely connected and customer centric, and use that information to sort of turn around, have the freedom and the flexibility to be creative and curious, and then put that together into value proposition that customers actually are willing to pay for. And I just believe that's a very tangible example of what you asked me in terms of turning around and changing things. Because
absolutely, and that bridges very nicely to part 3 of this webinar, the art of being resourceful. And I think you highlighted already some of that. Well, I'll ask you a question on it later on. Maybe you can say something already about it. It's like, what did you do? I mean, what do you believe is the art to this? Because I mean, I've been in the business software industry for a long time, and I always, I come from the area where we had roadmaps of 2 years. Then it moved to agile, and we had sprints. But still, a lot of this roadmap was just occupied and just fixed. And how do you stay resourceful so that you can actually do what you've just did? Switch.
Yeah, I think it's almost something, because we have within Zeneta as well very different personas, right? But I believe resourceful to me goes together with grit and naive. I believe those, you got to be a bit naive, you got to have tons of grit, and finally, you can't let failure sort of or missed opportunities or whatever it is weigh too heavy on you. And it's the combination, it's something like a mental balance that you need to find, right? I struggle to sort of explain the exact secret sauce, but it's almost like a cultural element, and how you treat people and how you work together with this combination of being resourceful, never give up, keep on grinding it, be a bit naive in terms of your attempts on what you dare to explore, right? Because we came from the industry as well, fully knowing that everybody thought it would be impossible to do what we did, right? Or what we have done. So we were very naive in our approach, and I believe there's a huge amount of value in that, right? But it's as with everything, as with curiosity as well, being focused. It's a balance you got to try and strike, and that's why it's so a bit sort of connected to the cultural aspects.
Yeah, and that's exactly maybe where the magic is. But I connect with everything that you're saying there, and people maybe need to re-listen again to what you've just been saying, and we're going to publish this later on. But there's a lot of value in what you just said. So Dagmar, question back to you. You just highlighted already the product that you've been talking about, and that was in relation to the curiosity side and really picking up on the idea. But what you also, of course, did was being able to switch with your company to actually start doing it and make sure that you are first to market with this. So how did you achieve that? How did you ensure that your organization was as resourceful as it was for this particular scenario?
Well, I think what we quite good at is that we have a very modular structure. This is something that we've developed quite early on when we designed the products based on our experiences up front. When we founded the company in 2012, we merely had projects that we were doing. That means that our first clients, customers like the GfK, very big market research company in Germany, engaged us for projects that they were doing and that they were having interest in. And when we started to define the products, we always said we have to have a certain mindset that allows us to especially scale, that allows us to have a global application, and that allows us to react quickly and jump on opportunities. Because what we've always were confronted with is that everybody thought the way or what you are doing is so broadly applicable in a lot of industries. Aren't you doing too much? That was the focus problem that I think Paul has or Patrick has talked up front. And so we said, actually, the type of technology that we have, yes, it is applicable in various industries. And no, that doesn't mean that we don't focus, not at all. Because what we focus on is on this product scalability and modularity that allows us to act quickly and to act flexible. So that we have a very certain baseline that we always can use, that we can trust, that is accurate, that is robust, that is already developed. And on this baseline, jump modularly onto a different type of opportunities, whether this is basically in the health market, whether this is market research, whether this is communication, whether this is automotive, whether this is IoT, whether this is health. It always has the core technology and then the add-on module to the certain type of problem that I need to solve. And this core technology had always had to have the possibility of being easily deployable, dynamic, situative, and down to the individual with the highest potential of protection. That means that we were always designing on what is our future with regards to how will people use this type of product, especially when it comes to the personal data, which always means that they have to be the king of the data, the owner of the data, and the ones to release the data to their situation, how they want to have it. Exactly. So when we came back, closing the gap, with regards to the Corona situation, it was not actually a big thing for us to jump on the opportunity. We said, okay, what can we do with the things that we already have? What would be the next path to enhance or the next module for the next step? And how can we step out quite quickly here? And for us, that meant only a small refocus of things, not towards a special new opportunity, but just being as quickly and as easy moving in this type of direction. And I think one of the things that is quite untypical for us as a German company, because German companies are usually not there with a failure culture. So in Germany, if you have a company, if you're a small company, you're not allowed to fail, not at all. You're not allowed to learn from your failures, because this is something that is just not acceptable. Failure, it's a bad concept. Although everybody says, like Amazon, Jeff Bezos says, failure is very good because it brings you forward. This is not quite acceptable here. Also not if you're going for funding or something. Nobody here wants failure. So you have to keep the failure, if you're having failure, more or less under the carpet, and still, however, allow yourself and your team to look under this carpet, because of course you are not always not failing. You always will fail on certain things, and it helps you tremendously to fail, because you then learn what you can do better, but you just cannot communicate it like you can, for example, in the US, where this is acceptable. So from our perspective, this always meant we allowed ourselves to look under this carpet and look at the failures and see what didn't work out well. What was the problem here? And how do we build this product without being not focused and without being not flexible? So focus and flexibility was always in the very core target of what we were doing. And I think that is quite a cultural difference to other SMEs here. And that's probably maybe one of things that is due to the value proposition that we have, and also due to the fact that we are always curious, and failure always links to curiosity. How can we do that better? Are we curious to succeed?
Yeah, and courage is part of it as well. So how often do you look under the carpet? Is it something that you do on a regular basis, quarterly, for example?
Absolutely. Actually, I do that every week. If something doesn't work out, if we miss a deadline or something, we look under the carpet and said, why did we miss this deadline? Damn it, what was it this time? Yeah. Why did we not communicate clearly, for example, from another partner what we need? Where did we not look onto things that could occur that we haven't anticipated correctly? And what was the problem with this anticipation process? Why didn't we see that? And then we are learning, we're making a new iteration curve, and then we see, okay, next time let's try anticipate. Do we anticipate it now correctly? If we do, good, then we've learned something. If we don't, we'll have to try out something new.
Very wise words, and it proves again that you can that it is very wise to design for this, whether you're a small company or even a large company, and it shows again. I want to move on with the last question of this particular section to Cindy. So what is the most valuable lesson that you learned in being resourceful, maybe across the whole life cycle of sales choice, and how has this helped you to come out stronger right now?
Well, the whole life cycle. I don't know if I've got enough time to answer the whole life cycle. I think I'll just zoom in on. Yeah, I think the last 10 weeks is probably, otherwise I'll be here with far too many thoughts. I think the key thing is that what's happened is in Canada in particular, and our clients are mainly Canada and the US, is that we've been really staying close to them to listen to where they're at in relationship to the COVID virus and the kinds of things that are on their mind. So obviously different industries have been impacted in different degrees. So, you know, the clients that are, I call it booming, and we've got one of those that's booming because of COVID. They're in the logistics industry and they just can't keep up. They clearly are investing and have bigger appetites for new, I call it add-ons and solving other use cases. So obviously we put focus there in terms of being resourceful. And the other accounts that are really hurting, we've got one major account that's in the, I call it resourcing fulfillment of moving resources on site. And obviously with a lot of those resources not being able to access or be on site, you know, they're having to really think hard on their transformation. So I think partially our resourcefulness has been being attuned to which buyer profiles are going to be the best. And kind of mentioned earlier, probably the deeper segmentation positioning is really one of the key things that we're working on. I think in summary, you know, I would just net it out that, you know, some of the other colleagues have already mentioned it, but being value centric is sort of top of mind. Preparing for growth in terms of investing in the next right moves. So we're investing, we just finished some branding, we've got a new website coming up. I mentioned the segmentation. We also are building out our product in some new ways. You know, that's the kind of the nice thing with a little bit more time, you can start reflecting and maybe doing a little bit more ideation. So we're building out a new coaching overlay. So for the people that everybody suffers from attention deficit or attention distraction. So, you know, if you aren't as analytically inclined, you can just get the sound bites in real time, just surface up to you like on a weekly basis that are relevant. And, you know, I think none of us can lose sight of the agility side of things. And I can't stress enough the maintaining the body and mind balance, because humans, you know, although we're all acclimatizing and, you know, obviously being in the tech software industry, we're all pretty used to being remote, right? And working, you know, and kind of your office can be anywhere. But at the same time, when you can't really go anywhere, that brings up another level of distraction. And so I do think everybody's got to be very conscious of their health, their mindfulness, giving people maybe more breaks. It's something I'm giving a lot more thought to, of how do we give more space to make sure everybody's feeling that they've got time to be, you know, to nurture even more. These are very complex, you know, topics, and, you know, being resourceful is not just about, you know, pounding the pavement, right? Especially now.
Exactly. Wise words, and yeah, I mean, you can see that any company can really focus on their resourcefulness in a variety of different ways, just looking at the problem in a different way and reflect a little bit more what you should do and what's best for the company and best for your customers. So moving to the last chapter here, question to Paul, and I ask a couple of those same questions to the other people as well. I was asking Cindy the question, like, what has been the most valuable lessons learned about resourcefulness? Another way to phrase it, what has been your biggest aha moment during this crisis? Any words on that, Paul?
Yeah, I really like what Cindy said. I mean, I think the nurturing part of it is super important. And as you may know, both Facebook and Google, I think last week, said they will have the bulk of their staff working from home until the end of the calendar year. That's a real change. My specialist is in the neuroscience of human connection, and how do we connect if we're just using, video conferencing? We're not seeing other people.
Yeah.
So what we really did is pivot into that. So it's say, what our platform measures is what people love, what gives them energy, what motivates them to put in discretionary effort or to purchase or share. So we really adapted that technology, as you mentioned on the top, Ton, to helping employees at work. So again, using our software platform and their existing wearable, we can help their supervisors and their team members understand how effectively they're able to work, what they're working on. And particularly, we added a new feature measuring, I think for the first time, psychological safety physiologically. So many people know that Google made psychological safety on self-report really popular about 10 years ago as the best predictor of team performance. What we did was create a physiologic measure of that, so you can actually see how psychologically safe your team is second by second. And I think it's really important to get that feedback, which is, I have a team member who, because we're adults and we're, reasonably healthy psychologically, is generally not going to say to my supervisor, hey, Ton, I'm really struggling because my wife's been laid off and blah, blah, blah. You're just going to try to power through it. But if I had that insight, that kind of, intelligence about this individual, then I can actually be a much more effective manager. I can be a much more effective team member. And so this feature that we built, probably 8 months ago, and kind of had it sitting on the shelf, just as Cindy said, we realized that this was actually very important. So we brought that front and center into our platform, made it much more prominent, and then began to discuss that with clients and potential clients. And they all said, oh yeah, we've just realized that this is a different world, and this world is, at least for the time being, not going to be changing anytime soon. So how do I manage a team now in which, as everyone said, we need people to take risks. We need them to feel like they're being supported by their team members. But at the same time, I can't stop by your desk or do a daily huddle with you, at least not in person. So one thing we've seen our clients do is really increase the frequency of kind of daily huddles. So we're seeing twice a day. I'm a big believer in the standing huddle when we were in the office. I love the 5-minute standing huddle. I think it's very efficient. But we're seeing clients now do that for a little longer, 20, 25 minutes in the morning, and another 20, 25 midday. So really doing that check-in, spending some more time on that. Obviously, if you're using our technology, you're going to get insights into how effectively those individuals are able to work together as a team. When you need to sit down and say, hey, you know what? I've just looked at your data and looks like you're struggling a little bit. So let's take a breath. Are we giving you too much work? Do you need to take a break today? So it really gives us that insight into particularly people's emotional states that are, can be read. If you're in person, I can probably read that moderately effectively, but remotely super hard, even with video conferencing. So I think it's really managing the humans. And I think all of us have created technology that help us manage those humans, because we're just not great at it. As much as we're highly social creatures, we are not experts at all the people around us who, we may or may not know that well.
Wow. I mean, I didn't even realize how big this, your invention at the end could be in situations like this. So this is also maybe a blessing in disguise. And for people that want to understand a little bit deeper in terms of what Paul is doing, just check out his TED Talk. That's fascinating in itself. So a question to Patrick. One about mindset. Paul already highlighted, I think, on this as well. What did you learn about mindset during this crisis?
Great question. I think what has surprised me the most is how laser focused everybody became. So first you had this initial like, oh shit, what's going to happen now, right? With China closing down, then we saw Europe closing down sort of a bit later, and then you could do the math and understand that it was a matter of time before US closed down as well, right? Yeah. And especially within our company, which is, it's all about global trade. When you close the world manufacturing hub in China, you early on understand that you're running into some shit, right? So you spend a bit of time to worry and sort of adjust a little bit, right? But what surprised me after that is how focused we all became. And all of this, we managed to do it while sitting remote. We took out like 20% cost in a very short amount of time. Also, when you've been growing a business for a long time, you've also sort of amassed a lot of fat. So it was sick to see how much we could carve out without us being hurt, which is also something, you know, in retrospective, I hope we never go back. And I believe this is also the case for many of the large businesses that I've spoken with, executives and of the companies that's our customers, where they say, you know, we've carved out so much cost and this is simply not ever coming back, which, and you know, I don't want to go on and predict stuff, but it's going to be interesting to see how that comes, what consequence comes from that later on. But I would like to sort of say that the key thing is how the organization came together to tackle this challenge and being laser sharp on what really mattered now, from, you know, taking out costs to building a new product to pushing the product to retain as many customers as possible, and to create the playbooks that we very quickly put in place to define how we would deal with customer scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because you gotta be aware that we had some of the biggest brands in the world reaching out to us and said, we're not going to pay the bill. We understand we're legally obliged to live by the contract, but we're not doing it. We're either, you know, just simply flat on refusing, or we're filing for Chapter 11. There's been these business behaviors that we've seen from some of these big corporates, and these are public as well. So you don't even need to take my word for it. If you look at what H&M, Adidas, Puma, a few of the ones announced in Germany, where they said we refuse to pay rent for our stores. That type of behavior is unprecedented. I've never seen that in my entire professional career, and all of a sudden they were knocking on our door, and we're a midget relative to these companies, right? And we're really depending on the revenue. So how to play all of this from a home office environment, it was so inspiring to see how everybody came together to solve that challenge.
Yeah, inspiring indeed is the right word. Wow. Yeah, what can I say? I mean, where do you? Yeah, no. Let me switch the question, because we're heading towards the top of the hour. Mindset. Yeah. Cindy, what did you learn about mindset?
What did I learn about mindset? I think it's, I probably should throw this back to Malay. He's probably one of their most reflective leaders, not only mentally, but also spiritually. I would say, number one, I've been really reading a lot more about mindfulness. That might be the curiosity in me, because most of our, you know, larger accounts, they see, the CEOs and the executives see that as one of the most important challenges to manage. What they're predicting will be higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of maybe more depression. You know, if we have wave 2, we underestimate, or wave 3. So, you know, I think what I'm trying to do is really reflect myself pretty deeply, and then bring it back to the leadership team, because we're still small and emerging. We're very much in the, you know, got product, key clients and privately held, and are moving into scale up mode. But I think the answers in the mindfulness are in the context of the leaders that we need to ensure are motivated to build out the future and really listen really hard to what they need. So, I think this aspect of reflection and, maybe even giving more space is probably nothing else we're going to have to do. I'm a pretty driven type A personality, maybe a bit of a workaholic in the sense I kind of work a lot, but I try and find space every day where I go for a long walk for an hour and a half, like early in the morning. And I must admit, if I don't do that, I'm probably not as effective. And I've been pretty vigilant in maintaining that. But I do worry about some of my team where I can see, some of the senior engineers in particular, they're quite comfortable hiding behind their desk. And, I think what, Paul, you were doing is very breakthrough, because we all know that, people get backaches and any kind of physiological aspect you can detect, right? So I think it's going to be really intriguing in the sense of the new approaches that we're all going to have to build out. I don't think, we're going to return to the new normal. We're seeing commercial real estate here already under rapid transformation. We're predicting even more fallout as people like companies like OpenText, which are fairly large here, are reducing their commercial real estate by over 50%, and it won't go back, right? So, I think that the whole aspect of being mindful is really rooted in authenticity, and taking sort of the whole, really appreciating what is unique about humans. One of the things that we've not mastered at all in the whole robotics and AI field is the art of creativity, and what humans are really, really strong at that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's an interesting one, how that evolves as well. But that's for a different time, a different episode of this panel. The last question to Dagmar, and that's dear to my heart always, is this fantastic word of being remarkable. What do you believe we need to do different in order to be remarkable in the new situation? What advice would you give to others to put their bets?
I think what really makes a difference is not only concepting, but really trying. There's a lot of things that people always talk about, but sometimes they rather wait on somebody else is trying it, or they think it's too risky. I think one of the things that this type of pandemic or anything teaches us here now is to just be curious and try out things and accept if they are not working completely flawlessly in the first hand. And even if you're a small startup, even if you're not backed up with a lot of VC money, try to basically not always be perfect, but try to get a solution done and out, and try to take it from there in order to be fruitful, and in order to see it as a positive possibility to do things differently that might not have been the opportunity before. And I think it's always a very good thing to embrace change rather than trying to be prevented. And it comes with, even if the organization has to act differently, like we had the same issue with having to move completely into the home office, and seeing also that there are some people who need more social tangibility than others. Some work well from home, some don't. And try to find out new ways, and not always say, oh my God, this is horrible that I have to find this new way, but liking that you have to find this new way. It makes you feel differently, and it gives you chances that you might try out things that you've never had the opportunity to try before because you were stuck in your typical process. And so this is something that I would really give as an advice. Don't be stuck in your process, otherwise you can't get better. And even if you fail once, well, then you fail once. It's not that tragic if you are curious enough to see what you have done wrong and that you try to make it better.
Wise words, and I think that's a nice wrap up for this session. A couple of key takeaways and a call to action. I'm not sure about you, but I've learned a great deal of things today. Thanks for all your contributions here. I mean, I know that I made a couple of notes in the beginning about curiosity and the courage to to keep your eyes open and to ask the right questions. And what Patrick said, be a bit naive. That's a very good one. Second thing I highlighted here is focus, customer focus. Keep them in mind all the time, because at the end you need to retain them in good times, but also in bad times. And it's all about the impact you make for them. What I really liked and want to highlight from you, Dagmar, is the design for resourcefulness. Really think this through with your organization, so that no matter what happens, you can always pivot and shift gears when the opportunity is there. These are just three. I want to keep it short because we're already on the top of the hour here. But I want to thank everybody for their contribution. Patrick, thank you very much. Cindy, Dagmar, Paul, and I want to hand it over to Malay for the final words.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And I believe nothing much remains to be said. That was an excellent discussion and a great way to conclude what has been an absolutely exciting webinar series so far. And I'd like to thank you, Don, for facilitating these discussions and getting the most out of our experts who have featured in at different times. For our audience, thank you so much for joining us here. I would like to point out our AI Predictive World Forum, which you can visit at saleschoice.com/resources. And it's a platform where you will find tons of material that will guide you deeper into the world of AI, sales, thought leadership, mindfulness, in fact, through webinars, podcasts, white papers, and blogs. And of course, more and more will keep coming up as we continually host experts in different fields to give us some of their experiences that everyone can benefit from. I would also like to quickly thank our sponsors and supporters, Value Inspiration, of course, but also CATA, which is the Canadian Advanced Technology Alliance, IT World Canada, which is Canada's largest publishing house for technology, and the Bedford Consulting Group /Transearch. It's been an inspiring journey, and we do hope that each of us manages to survive in this era and thrive in ways that we could have never imagined. So once again, thank you, everyone. Stay safe and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.